Good evening, everyone. It's time for Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions, we've got guesses. I'm Nash. Been doing Radio Dead Air for ages. In addition to that, I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gearman, who also does work in the IT professionally. If you've got tech questions for us, please, by all means, send those to requests@radiodeadair.com. We got a lot this week, actually, which is nice. Better to have too many than
Radio
too
Dead Air
few.
Tech Q&A. Where one thing we won't talk about is Arnold Palmer's putter.
What the hell did I miss?
Trump talking about Arnold Palmer's for several minutes in front of an audience.
Oh, it was Trump again? He glitched again? Oh, God.
He
today?
glitched again. Yep.
Last night he got stuck walking back and forth on the stage when the mic went out. Anyway.
Yeah.
So it's been, in some ways, it's been a little bit quieter week than the Arrow Lake stuff coming out last week. But in other ways, this was just, of all the places to attack online, like I could see tons of sites who have done things that someone would feel one way or another they deserved to be DDoSed. Sure.
Like if your insurance company screwed you over, or say a case
Right.
I'm currently dealing with, an insurance company that I am not even insured by charging me money, I could see them being DDoSed. A bank, yes. I could even see, a school, a university, maybe not necessarily legit, for legitimate reasons. Like, I'm going to say here very quickly. There was a guy back when I was at university who did a thing on one of the university servers, basically destroying the software, the OS on it, because he'd been caught cheating. So because he'd been caught, he was going to punish the university.
All right, let's see here. Well, I mean, this is sort of like what this attack, though. This was sort of like, I mean, kicking a puppy, really.
Yeah.
Internet Archive was hit with a massive DDoS this last week, and then a hack that got users' data, which
and there's no real good reason for why.
Yeah. Because, pardon me. I should take up my mic. Sorry, something went down the wrong end, or the wrong pipe, or you know what I mean.
And this one was driven from devices in Korea, China, and Brazil, which is a weird mix.
Well, the thing was, all right, the DDoS part of it, first of all, this was done by a botnet, which occurs when some malicious actor has put an infected piece of malware on any given internet device. And typically these malwares stay hidden. And they aren't, in a lot of times, they aren't even actively malicious to the device itself. So the user doesn't notice it's there.
Yeah, they're just using the device to do other things. For example, a lot of Internet of Shit devices, because they don't get updated, because they don't get patched, because they have default security protocols, if any security protocols, if someone can get into them, they can load them up with a little bit of malware that can be used for a botnet to basically just hit some target with a bunch of traffic.
Yeah, and the traffic is it's not even something that would show up on someone's bandwidth, really, because it's just little quick pings to any given site. Because and there are so many of those pings. That's what causes a directed denial of a distributed denial of service attack. Because it's so many pings coming from so many different places, it's hard to block them out because a good distributed denial of service attack, good being in quotes there, can look like regular internet traffic, just a lot of it. And that also does happen. You can get accidental denial of services by someone's site just becoming way more popular than it can handle. In this instance, though,
this used to be known back in the day as the Slashdot effect. When someone would post, you get an approved link on Slashdot saying, hey, here's this cool thing that this place is doing. And their site would go down because it couldn't handle the traffic of, 50,000 nerds once.
Yeah, and this is a subset of the Mirai botnet, Mirai, Mirai malware botnet. That one hits Linux-based devices, and surprisingly, a surprising number of devices out there run Linux because, one, it's free.
Yes,
there's no
you don't have to pay anyone.
And two, it runs on just about anything. So you could put a just a command line basic Linux installation on tiny little devices, and you have a free operating system. But because
you strip Linux down to just what you need for the device, exactly.
Just the kernel,
But because it's an Internet of Things device, it needs to be able to talk to other stuff, and that's where the botnet part comes in.
And also because it's Linux is Linux, and Linux has way more features than Linux actually that those devices actually need. But because it's Linux, it is still Linux. It has the options if you know what you're doing. What this potentially hit, the attack has been saying it hit a popular, well-known home entertainment Internet of Things product. There have been a lot of devices, cheap set-top Linux boxes with like Linux or Android. Well, half the one, they're similar. That what they do is they're just there to be streaming devices or media server receivers. They're like the smart part of your smart TV without the smart TV. That's all they are. And they're little and they're cheap. The trouble is some of them actually come from the factory, depending on where you get it from, with this malware already installed on it. And others, because the ports are open and because they don't get security updates, these are dirt cheap devices. They don't get constant security updates. So they are
because that would cost the company that made them money.
Yeah, so they're still open to this. So that's how these botnets spread. At the same time, someone also got, I believe, data about users. It doesn't really say which specific data about users yet. They're probably going to reveal. The Internet Archive is pretty responsible about that. They're going to.
I suspect. I can't see the Internet Archive keeping credit card data. So my suspicion is just login and password information, and hopefully it's encrypted password information.
That can still be valuable in some instances, but yeah, this is one of those. It's like, damn, you hit the Internet of the Internet Archive. Why would you do this?
My guess.
The fuck?
You have a new thing you want to test, and while it may piss people off, it's not going to automatically get the FBI after you the way it would if you did it, say, to a bank.
But it's the Internet. It's like you're attacking your own library in town. It's like you set the library on fire.
Okay, so you're saying it was Republicans.
Oh, we're going to get us in trouble, man. Damn. But no, seriously, it's...
You were thinking it, though.
It's irritating to me because it knocked the service almost completely offline. And this meant the Wayback Machine and also other people freely make media available, like ancient archived media, like old stuff that's way out of copyright, actual public domain, surprisingly enough. You can find this stuff on the internet. There's old games, the abandonware games on the Internet Archive you can find. And some of these things were actually useful, like the Wayback Machine will allow you to investigate stuff that people have tried to scrub from the internet. Sometimes it's still there and you can find it. Personally, for me, it's I love the Wayback Machine because there's a lot of, it's a little bit sad. There's a lot of tube amplifier technicians and knowledge that's not being picked up. There are not a lot of new tube amplifier technicians coming
there's
into the market.
stuff that's just you can't find anymore. The websites are long gone, and the Wayback Machine is the only way.
Yeah. Some of them have passed on, like because they don't make the stuff anymore, and the few people are taking them. So if you need some of that information that's very special and specific to certain devices, the Internet Archive and the Wayback Machine is essential. So this is just really crappy. They've got their stuff partially back up, and they're working to restore things. But also considering it's nonprofit, this doubly sucks. But we'll have to see. One of the useful things about this is, like Mike, you were saying, they were potentially testing out an attack here. One of the potential useful things here is the Internet Archive, I'm sure, will make the data available to be analyzed so that they can figure out how this attack worked and potentially help other sites prevent, shit from happening to them. Okay. So that's story number one. Story number two. Intel and AMD are both killing me right now. NVIDIA a little less so, but Intel and... So last week we talked about Arrow Lake, and we talked about the fact that they've removed hyper-threading, and the performance is not going to be much better than current Raptor Lake. So they're going to be a plateau. It's going to be a lot of efficiency gains, which are really, really impressive, but performance-wise, it's going to act very similar to current 14900K and similar parts that are already available. Ryzen and AMD had the chance with the X3D processors to jump way ahead of Arrow Lake at this opportunity. Guess what? Not so much. MSI leaked a internal screenshot of how much they anticipate the speeds for the Ryzen 9000 X3D series, and
as always, it's very game dependent. Certain games will see way better increases than others.
There's a little bit of good news and a little bit of bad news. One of the problems with the Ryzen 7000 series is the X3D, before now, the X3D processors, because they were limited to a lower voltage and a lower clock speed, they were close in performance to the non-X3D CPUs, but the non-X3D CPUs in multi-threading, in general performance, was overall faster. For game-specific stuff, the X3D CPUs were faster, but the overall ones, the regular CDs. Well, the good news is they've managed to close the gap. So now the X3D CPUs will perform just the same in general performance as the non-X3D CPUs will perform. They'll just also be faster in gaming. That's nice. The problem is they're not really going to be any faster than the 7000 X3D in gaming. Even though you will have...
I'm reading the article here. It says up to 13%, again, depending on game.
Yeah.
And 13% is a pretty big jump. But again, that's very much specific games.
This was only for the 9950 X3D and the 9800 X3D. They did not announce a 9900 X3D. And the reason, or the 9600 X3D. The reason why that makes a difference is those are technically flawed chips. What they do is sometimes when you have CPUs that come out with a couple cores don't work properly, they simply disable them and sell those CPU cores as a lower tier part. That's where the 9900 and the 9900 X3D come in. Those are 6-core CCDs, little chiplets. 2 of them are put together to make a 12-core CPU, and 1 of them is left on its own to make the 7600, the 9600, a 6-core CPU. The trouble there is with the X3D stuff. There are 2 CCDs in the higher level things, the 9900 or the current ones, the 7900 X3D and the 7950 X3D. There are 2 cores in there that are for the 12 core, it's 2 6-core sets, and for the 16 core, it's 2 8-core sets. But only one of those cores, one of those chiplet sets, has the X3D RAM. The other one does not. And because of the way they're put together, there is some latency between the 2 chiplets talking to one another. Effectively, that means sometimes when you're gaming with, say, the 9950 X3D, it behaves as if it's only really an 8-core gaming CPU, like the 7800 X3D, because the 3D RAM is only on one half of those 16 cores. That becomes a bigger problem with the 7900 X3D, because while it's a 12-core CPU, technically, because the X3D is only on one of the chiplets, it behaves like a 6-core CPU, which is, in general, tends to be slower in gaming. So that made the 9900 X3D not as valuable to game. So it might be, because they haven't been really technically announced, it might be AMD is removing those from the lineup, because the 7900 X3D kind of sat on shelves. It was a bit of a shelf warmer. But yeah, the Zen 5 is looking like all across the board, while there were some efficiency gains, which again, it's going to be great for their server parts. For home users, Zen 5 is really kind of a dud. There is, if you're already on AM4, there is no good reason, literally no good reason, barely anything, to upgrade what you already have. Like, some people were thinking that, they'd put X3D on both chiplets, and that way that they wouldn't have that
That would
anymore.
be good.
They wouldn't have the latency issues anymore, and they'd be better. No, they didn't do that. It is kind of a holding pattern. And in terms of showing up Arrow Lake, it looks like both Intel and AMD are coming in this next generation coasting along. Technically, technically the 9900 X3D will still be the fastest gaming CPU available, even faster than Intel stuff. But it's also not that much faster than what we already have. So this is kind of going to be a lost generation for updating. And just to make it even better, I watched Hardware Unboxed earlier this week. I, again, like and subscribe to them on YouTube. Fantastic tech channel. And they broke down how, we have the new chipset for Ryzen, for the Zen 5, the X870E, X870, and 850 and all that. Well, turns out, technically, the X870E is pretty much the X670E with USB 4. The plain X670 is B650E. So it's the same chipset underneath. They just renamed it to confuse things in the product stack.
But confuse things or get people? Well, yeah, confuse things to get people to buy. Okay.
Even worse, the lowest end of the stack is usually called the A series. You had the A520, A620. The reason why is those don't overclock, and they don't scale. They don't have a whole lot. They're very feature stripped. These are meant to be workstation type systems and whatnot. They don't have a lot of bling and flair to them. They're not meant to do a lot. The previous version was called the A620. Guess what the new version is called in the 800 series?
B670.
B840. It's clearly an A-level CPU motherboard. It doesn't overclock, but they renamed it to B840 to confuse people. And I just so scummy. Like, I remember the early era of Ryzen 1000, 2000, even 5000. AMD was really straightforward about their stuff and really user focused, but now their marketing people have just gone ham. They've lost their damn minds over these last few generations, both on the video card side and on the CPU side. And it's honestly, if you're thinking of upgrading, you don't, unless you desperately need USB 4 for some reason, you don't need to buy the 800 series. You could probably get some good deals on the 600 series, especially coming up to Black Friday next month. So, and anyways, one more AMD news. Speaking of probably the one of the best things AMD ever did, the Ryzen 7 5800X3D, the Uber class gaming CPU that allowed people who have really early Ryzen motherboards to extend the life of them and get really great performance, is finally leaving store shelves after all this time.
Yeah. Well, it's all this time since 2022.
Yeah. I mean, it's only 2 years. Wow. But for 2 years, they have pretty much dominated gaming. Even the 5800X3D, while it is slower now comparatively, and technically, if you buy, say, a Ryzen 5 7600 for AM5, it's about the same speed, but you can get that speed on an earlier platform, which is the really big advantage. It was this was like so generous, it felt, to users, and it's kept a lot of AM4 systems alive much longer and help people with cheap upgrades. It's not going to be available new anymore. It's going to be reaching end of life status after only 2 years. So if you were thinking of getting one, if you were strapped for an upgrade option, now's the time. Because they ain't going to be around much longer. Also, the 5600 X3D is going to be leaving. I don't know if the 5700 X3D is going to be going as well. That one's a slightly underclocked 5800 X3D. But it's probably not going to be long for this world either. So if you were waiting and you were intending to upgrade, yeah, now's the time. I just kind of have to sit in awe of the 5800 X3D because it was amazing that CPU came out offering what it did for the price it did, running circles around Intel at the time, like the 12900K and stuff. And they continued that with the 7800 X3D and all that. The value they offered their customers was just unheard of. And I guess that might be why marketing is losing their shit, because I guess they feel like they've offered too much value to the customers over the years. Oh, I don't think we're ever going to see its like again. AM4 has just been an amazing platform. Like, if you bought into AM4 early, you have had a cornucopia of savings. Just like if you were, say, on a B450 motherboard that has PCIe 4.0, you're in excellent shape. Even today, you're still, that is still a demon of a platform to start on. So, all right, that is our news for this week. Now it's time to get to some questions. If you got them, we may have a little room this week for a couple more tech questions. We got a lot, so let's get
yeah, we
started.
We got a few in this week.
Yeah, we got a few. All right. Starting off, this actually leftover one from last week. Daryl got this in right as we were about to I didn't even notice it till we were signing off. All right. I've been migrating my home office equipment to a different room thanks to air conditioning issues. I recently got a new guitar, GNL Fallout Tribute. It was a nice little guitar. So I moved my audio gear in with a temporary setup so I could try it out. There was a god-awful loud hum in the setup. I was hoping you can figure out where to look to fix it later this weekend. I don't have a recording of it, but it sounds like feedback but lower pitched. If you know the hum you get when you touch the end of the guitar cable for plugging it in, that's about the sound. I have two pedals, Fender Pugilist Distortion, Behringer TM 300 tube amp modeler, which are plugged into one wall outlet. The other's plugged into my blah, 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 blah. First thing I plan to check is plugging everything in the same outlet because I know you've said that can cause a hum. Yes, that can cause a ground loop.
Yeah, and that's what I suspect this is.
Yeah, a ground loop, if you plug things into the same outlet sometimes, or multiple outlets sometimes, you can get a resonance that sets up at 60 hertz trying to find its way to ground, and it makes
Failing.
this what? Failing.
Trying to find its way to ground and failing.
And it makes this 60 hertz noise. That is your standard ground loop, and it can get loud depending. And this while we're talking about a guitar amp here, this can apply to other audio stuff as well, like a home theater system or whatnot, because if two devices are connected together, say via HDMI cable or guitar cable, grounds cross through there. Those cables have grounds on them, and they try to find electricity. Once tried to find a path to ground. Sometimes it needs to, depending on the application. One thing to do is to split split things up between outlets or put everything on the same outlet. Because
whichever you weren't doing.
Yeah. All of the outlets in your house may have different routes to ground. That's the tricky part. You don't know. It's just how they're put in the wall. If they have different routes to ground, or if they have the same route to ground, that can be an effect on the ground loop. So shuffling outlets is always an option there. There are ground loop interrupters. They are kind of expensive, but one called HumX and a couple others. They're devices that are made to lift the ground, and it does prevent the humming. Or they also have not just lift the ground. That's one option. These actually have transformers and components inside that are meant to adjust. They get rid of the hum. Obviously another option is some sort of filter pedal. Not ideal, because filtration, even if you're notched at 60 hertz, you can also take some sound out of the guitar, your instrument, or wherever you want to get output from. So not an ideal option there. Other things can influence it. Like, for example, okay, Drake Mears says, I use a 3-prong to 2-prong adapter on a speaker and that fixed it. No. Never do that. If a device has a 3-prong cable, that third prong is an earth ground. It is there for a reason. Never remove an earth ground in any way from a device that comes with a ground on it, because without that, you are running the risk of a lethal shock depending on the device. Never, ever, ever. They call them cheaters. These are I gotta show you. These are some of the stupidest things. It's like those plugs with the male on both end power adapters. Those are stupid too. I don't know how these are legal to sell.
Because they haven't set anyone important on fire yet. That's how.
Yeah. These are just the goddamn dumbest things to be in existence. They're called cheaters. What they do is they take a 3-prong and turn it into a 2-prong. And ostensibly what you're supposed to do is tie this little circle at the bottom. You're supposed to put a screw through that and tie it into the
existing ground.
Into the existing ground that's built into the outlet. Sometimes this is made for outlets that don't have 3 prongs. It's a way to get 3 prongs into a 2-prong outlet. They're still dangerous because sometimes that screw doesn't actually always ground things, and it's just
So yeah, sometimes there's no. It's not a ground. It's just a screw onto a plate. Yeah. Which, depending on your local code, is not supposed to be the case, but still sometimes is, because inspectors don't pull every plate.
Now you might be saying, how do people still build houses like that? I was living in a house like that when I was in Illinois. They are grandfathered past code, and that code went up until the 1970s. So the apartments I was in was built in the 70s, and they didn't have 3-prong outlets in every room. They had like one in the bathroom and one in the kitchen. and none of the other rooms had 3-prong outlets. It was a pain in the butt. The rent was good, though. Anyway, other things that could affect and add hum to things are interference-based devices. One of the typical ones is fluorescent or, on occasion, LED-based lights. Those can introduce hums. For a quick way to test is if you turn off the lights and the hum keeps going, it's the lights. And there's not really much you can do about that. But otherwise, yeah, it's that's about all you could do. It's a little bit voodoo to try to figure out what's causing what. But yeah, it sounds like there's some sort of grounding issue. Considering that guitar has a humbucker pickup on it, if you're still getting noise when the humbucker is turned on, that is definitely some sort of ground, because it's not coming from the guitar that causes that. Single coil pickups can cause that, but that one has a humbucker and a single coil. If you switch it to humbucker and it's still making the hum, then yeah. Well, LEDs can cause it too, David. The reason why is the power supply on LED bulbs, depending on how they work, sometimes works similar to fluorescent bulbs. And sometimes they're just not. They're made in such a way they cause a buzz. Sometimes, this is crazy, very bad LEDs have, bulbs have coil line. I found that before. Very light coil. It drives you nuts. You get your ear real close. The bulb is like, and you're like, oh, that's not good. All right, let's see what our next question is. This is from Jeremy in Ash and Mike and Cats. Having some trouble with my games on Windows. It started after I finally upgraded to Windows 11. We'll circle back to that because I think that may be kind of an issue here. Every now and then when I'm playing Cyberpunk or Elden Ring or anything like that, the frames will kind of stop for a second or two, and my frame rate will drop to single digits before continuing as normal. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough that it can interrupt my gameplay. Any advice on how to solve this? Ryzen 7 3600, RTX 3070, blah, 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 blah. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, Jeremy,
Drivers.
when you say you upgraded to Windows 11, does that mean you had Windows 10 and you installed the Windows 11 upgrade?
That's what it sounds like to me. And that's to me says drivers.
When Microsoft forever and ever has not gotten the trick down of actually cleaning out the crap from your previous installations. The reason why is when you upgrade Windows, when you upgrade from one edition of Windows to the next, it's taking everything that was in your registry with it as well. And that means you don't have to reinstall any of your programs. Everything's still there. You just, boom, you got a new operating system. Isn't that nice? Well, depending on how long you had that operating system or whatever you had installed in that operating system, some of it might not play nice with the new version. And some of it might just be gunk. And some of it, Windows 11 is like, the hell do I do with this?
Yeah. Now, this is not just a Windows 10 to Windows 11 thing. It was not even a Windows 9 to Windows 10 thing. Sometimes
Windows 8. Remember, there was no Windows 9.
Yeah. Sure. There depends on the company. Quite often, even with normally reputable companies such as NVIDIA, they will go, "Oh yeah, here's a massive upgrade on the driver," and they didn't bother to remove everything because they go, "Oh no, you really should do a complete uninstall and reinstall, but you can just install." And this happens. It happens with a lot of stuff. So
probably there is also going from Windows 10 to 11. Windows 11 has a couple of options in it. Let me look those up. It's got some gaming options that are not present in Windows 10. And gaming options.
They may be things you wish to turn off because they're interfering with you, but you don't know that they're there because they weren't there in previous versions.
They have memory integrity settings is one. Let's see. Virtual machine platform can cause issues with it as well. Yeah, the two big ones are enhanced pointer precision. Yeah, that's another one that can do it as well. There are a couple of changes they made to Windows 11 under the hood that are still a little iffy. So one of them
Yeah.
is memory integrity settings. Now, this might sound like it's vital to have, and it's supposed to protect you from malware attacks that can get into high security processes. But if it's your gaming machine, a lot of people don't even actually need this, and it can goof up and take up.
And the reason it goofs up is because the game wasn't coded to take advantage of this. It was rather coded to take advantage of it not being there.
And it uses up CPU resources, which can cause frame rate stutter. So what you want to do is you want to go to hit your Windows logo button. Let's see. Go to, you're going to go to control panel. You're going to look up core isolation in system settings. Not control panel, I guess settings. You're going to want to look for core isolation. You will find a setting there called memory integrity. Turn it off and try your game. If that works, ta-da, memory integrity was the issue. The other one is the virtual machine platform. That's made to secure and isolate hardware virtualization to make that more secure. But if you don't use a hypervisor, if you don't use virtualization, you don't need it. That one is under, you want to search for turn Windows features on or off. And then you're going to find, scroll down until you find virtual machine platform, uncheck that, reboot your system, and that will be turned off and probably, sort that out for you.
The other thing, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, was drivers. Please check to make sure your drivers from your system are up to date for Windows 11, because Windows 11, while it says it will pull down new drivers if it needs them, it doesn't always do the best job.
Yeah. Another thing you can do is wipe out those old drivers. Just nuke them from orbit. Let me see. Graphics driver. Let's see. What is display driver uninstaller. This comes from a website called guru13.com. And this has been the wonderful utility that allows you to completely clean out your display drivers from one version to the next. This will not just uninstall the display driver, it will make it as if that display driver was never installed. And any loose fragments of files, gone. Then you install, you download the latest one. What's it? RTX 3070, so it's from NVIDIA. You go to NVIDIA's website or GeForce Experience, download that, or just download the basic driver itself and reinstall it and see if that sorts it as well. And
the reason you want to get the fragments out is because sometimes the way things are coded, the software is looking for a file. I need this DLL. I need this sub program, and it's looking in multiple locations. If it's not hard coded, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is, and it'll go with the first one it finds. And if there's a fragment out there, you may be running the latest and greatest driver, but this fragment is from 2 drivers ago, and it found that first.
Worst case scenario, if none of these things work, your best option is a clean install of Windows 11. Because that would mean there's something hiding under there, something in the registry, something goofy, something that didn't translate properly from the upgrade. And trying to track it down would drive you insane. The easier solution, and even if it doesn't sound like it, is to wipe your operating system and start over. This is actually why I haven't upgraded to Windows 11 yet. Because the best option is to wipe it and start over. That would mean I would have to
take a good 2 days off.
Yeah, I'd have to copy all my settings from a lot of work critical applications like OBS for one. Make sure everything transfers over, back up everything, blah, 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 blah. Reinstall fresh, reinstall a whole bunch of applications and game. Well, the games I wouldn't have to. I think Steam could just find them on the regardless. It would be a lot. It would be a lot. So it's I've held off on it. I'm going to have to before much longer because we have 1 year from October 14th. So 1 year early, a little under a year now. Because next October, Windows 10 will no longer be officially supported. It'll be at end of life, and security updates will start going after that. And it'll be time for Windows 11, probably on the edge of Windows 12. So anyway, if Windows 12 comes out before then and it doesn't suck, I'll be like, fuck it, I'm just going to do Windows 12. Fuck this.
Yeah. Well, why do the upgrade twice?
All right. Next question. This is from Nick in Boulder, Colorado. Hi, guys. You have any advice on a good upgrade path from AM4? I'm still on a Ryzen 1700X and an MSI B350 Tomahawk. I looked up that board. You know what? I forgot this. The first generation of Ryzen was the last generation before RGB. There's no RGB. There's R. There's no RGB. There's just R because it's just red. I know I can, Charlie, what are you doing? Be good. I know I can upgrade my CPU, but considering the motherboard doesn't have PCIe 4.0, I'm thinking it's time to move on from that as well. But money's very tight, and I don't have as much as I'd like to put into it. Also, I'm still on an RTX 2060, and I'm not sure if it's time to upgrade that as well while I'm at it. Budget for an upgrade is going to be 500 or below, and I'm trying to wait until Black Friday.
That's fair. One thing you can check, and I know I say this kind of thing a lot, Newegg has bundle builders where you can say, hey, I'm looking for this, looking for this, looking for this, and it'll find you a deal.
Yeah, let me just
so that may be something to look
price wise. First of all, I'm going to say I would, if it were me. Ooh, and he's got that 2060 as well. I mean, for 500, you're looking at maybe a 4060 would be the upgrade there, but you still don't have PCIe 4.0. That's tough. That's kind of your box. If you had, like I said earlier, if you had B450, you'd have PCIe 4.0, so you'd be in much better shape. But crap. All right. Well, fortunately, B650 for AM5 is really good. And if I'm looking up properly, AMD show me ASRock, which have been remarkable this generation in terms of motherboards they've made available. AM5, B650. Yeah, the ASRock, what's the one? It's the Lightning. Oh wow, they have those open boxes as low as $102. ASRock B650 PG Lightning has been an excellent motherboard. Also pretty good is their the B650M PG Riptide. The only difference is that one is a micro ATX as opposed to a full ATX. And that would be about $170 for the motherboard, which is still really pricey, but then it would be a 7600. Let me look here. So that we're talking about 150, 170, probably 150 or less on Black Friday, just off the top of my head. Let's see, how much is a 7600 going for right now? Non-X. That's $200 up front. And then you'd still, well, okay, you could probably do it. Yeah, that'd be a Ryzen 5 7600 for about 200 right there. With a motherboard that's about 350, 375. That's plenty of money left for RAM. So yeah, that probably might be the route I'd go. It sucks having to hold off on a new GPU, but you're not going to get the full. I mean, if you really want a graphics upgrade right now, you could get like an RTX 4060 Ti for under 500, and that would be a big boost over the 2060. Trouble is, you'd still be limited to PCIe 3.0, but it would still be a big boost over what you have right now. You'd still need to upgrade the platform eventually. So it's a matter of what's more important to you, gaming performance right now or longevity of the platform. Now, I will tell you, going from a Ryzen 1 1700X to a 7600, that's going to be a big jump. You will notice a performance jump on your system. That's because we're talking
Indeed.
what, 2017. So that is a 6-year-old CPU. You're going to notice a big jump. Big jump. So it's what matters to you most right now. Frame rate, gaming performance right now, or if you could just hold on that 2060 a little longer. The nice thing is the 2060 will perform better with a newer CPU. Not like tremendous. You're not going to get like 2 generations ahead performance off of it, but it will have a better frame rate because first generation Ryzen was a little, I mean, it was impressive considering what AMD had already made, but it's still a little jank by today's standards. So, yeah, you can do a full platform upgrade. You can get the motherboard, the CPU. ASRock is pretty good this generation. They've done a good job. So you get motherboard, CPU, and probably easily 16 gigabytes of RAM for under 500, or you can get the video card. It's kind of either or.
Yeah.
You just have to
Now,
decide.
maybe there'll be a fantastic deal that shows up on Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
I don't know that it'll be so fantastic that you'll be able to get all you want under 500.
Like they are probably going to be some sales on the Ryzen 7000 series. I don't know how long it'll last, but we'll have to see. Don't bother with Ryzen 9000. It's not worth it. Honestly, if you're trying to save money, it's really not worth it. Okay, let's see. David has a question. Hi, David. How you doing? It's been a hot minute since I bought any printer, even at work. Any recommendations on a low-use all-in-one? I'm going to go with my standby, that personal experience that I've had an excellent experience with is Canon and their laser printers. I never
recommend. The reason we
recommend.
say laser printers is because if you don't print something for 5-6 weeks with a laser printer, it'll still print. You don't print something for 5-6 weeks with a inkjet, it might have said, "No, I've dried up."
Yeah, it's kind of perverse, but if you don't print a lot, getting the more expensive laser printer, or if you don't print color, it's a better deal anyway. Laser printer is always a better option than inkjet because inkjet is made to be a scam. Essentially, it wasn't always that way. Like I remember, I had one of the very early HP color jet inkjet printers, like in the 90s, and it was slow comparatively to dot matrix, but the ink lasted a while. It was robust. It was a good printer. I used that thing for years. It's just been in the last 15, 20 years, inkjet has started to become kind of a scam. I would never recommend buying an inkjet printer to anybody. The Canon image class stuff, we have a Canon image class. It's not multifunction, but just a printer, just a color printer. That thing is a tank. It still prints great. I think I'm only just now, after 4 or 5 years, running out of black ink. And that's the cartridge that came with it. So yeah, that's been a good run.
Now, of course, Canon does in the image class do an all-in-one. Difference
they do a
is,
couple, yeah.
The difference is $200 to $300 that you're paying for copy and fax and whatever else the all-in-one covers.
One of the nice things is there are some older models, and I cannot for the life of me tell you what's the difference between some of the older models between the newer models, but you can get some of the older models of the image class multifunction all-in-one for as low as $300 for the full. And that's comparable to a really good inkjet multifunction all-in-one as well. So this is kind of, I'd look and see what they have, but they start at about $300, and that's what I would get if I had to have multifunction, because we don't have multifunction, and we have ours is just fine. It's still, I even broke the damn thing, and I was able to fix it. That's something you can't really do with an inkjet print. I fixed it. I was able to take out the parts, put in a replacement, and it worked again. And most inkjet printers, if you break them, they are dead. The money's gone. So, okay,
and I'll say it's very easy for them to break with ink clogs. So,
all right, last one is from Seth. It says, good evening. So I updated my Android tablet this week, and tucked among the various things highlighted as new was the ability to set a limit on charging to help preserve the battery's life, but not charging past 80%. I get that there is validity to not fully charging a battery, so the 80% thing does make some sense, but how much extra life does one actually expect to get extending the battery out the battery this day? Or way, I think you said this way. If you're not someone who tends to keep a device until it dies, is it worth it? Is it more of a peace of mind thing? Well, lithium-ion batteries, which we're still using for most devices, we don't have really good. We have some options in development, but we have some, a couple that aren't quite ready, so we're still stuck with lithium-ion. They wear down. This is something I'm sure everyone here is well aware of. The more you charge them, they have a certain number of set charge cycles. And once you've done them enough, they can no longer hold a charge at the same level. And they start going slowly degrading until they don't hold a charge at all anymore. One of the ways to prevent, or not prevent it, but to draw it out is not charging the device all the way to 100%. If you charge a lithium-ion battery, say to about 80, that battery lasts a little bit longer, and the amount of battery life you trade off on a daily basis is negligible. But then again, maybe you need all of that battery life. So it kind of is a trade-off. No matter what you do, that battery's going to die eventually. Even if you do the 80% thing. It's the difference between maybe months to longer of extra life on that battery, as opposed to it dying much faster and you have to replace it or get a new tablet altogether. Drake says chemistry has improved such that charging to 100 is not particularly really as much of an issue these days. Deep discharges, though, are much worse. Yes, deep discharges. That's when you go from 100 to 0. That's when you drain it to death. That puts a good strain on a battery as well. If you charge a battery of a device all the way as far as it will go and then just run it till it won't turn on anymore, that can have particular issues with the device. Honestly, I'd say it's a nice idea and it can extend it, but it's going to be up to you how much. I don't think this is going to be adding extra years to the battery life. Maybe a couple months, maybe, depending on how it's set up.
So it really is a peace of mind thing, but yeah.
Yeah. You'll have to decide if that's worth it to you, or if you really just want to get every last second you can out of that battery. Just to preserve the life of it, don't let that battery drop below, say, 25% or so, if you can absolutely help it. Once you've charged it, put it back on, get it on the charger once it hits a certain lower level, because again, going from 100 to 0, that's much more stressful on the battery than, Tend to keep it plugged in my desk, not traveling back and forth to work these days, so I'll keep it on to not max it. Yeah. So that's they did that with my mouse now. My mouse only charges to 80%. It doesn't hurt anything because the damn mouse charge lasts for days, but all right, let me double check, see if we have anything else this week. And that appears to be it. Excellent. So, folks, thank you one and all for being here, for your questions, for letting us try and help you out with stuff. If you've got some for us, by all means, send those to requests@radio.air.com or put them in the comments here on YouTube, and we'll pick them up there. In the meanwhile, for Mike and myself, we'll be back next week. See you then. Night, everybody.